Good day. My name is Tim Chelpaty. I'm the president of Veterans Office Solutions. Today's topic is substance abuse disorders and suicide prevention. Our guest is John Baldonado. John has extensive experience and education with substance abuse. He had his education at Otero Junior College in La Junta, Colorado, Fort Lyons Veterans Administration Hospital in Fort Lyon, Colorado, and Louisiana State University. He is a licensed counselor and therapist practicing here in New Mexico. He is also Veterans Office Solutions Director of Substance Abuse and Suicide Prevention. Welcome, Mr. Baldonado.
Thank you for having me, Mr. Chelpaty.
And we would like to ask, what is the purpose for addressing addiction in Veteran Office Solutions program?
Well, my understanding is the program would like to have veterans become useful and purposeful within their life and have quality life. And of course, some individuals' lives have been hampered with substance use or substance abuse problems. And of course, if we can address those problems, it becomes easier for them to become profitable and successful within their lifestyle.
And Mr. Baldonado, you mentioned substance abuse problems. What do you find to be the causes for the substance abuse?
Well, there's many issues. However, often it may be PTSD, it may be stress related, it may be environmental, it may be problems reintegrating back into the civilian life after being in the service. There's many underlying problems, self-esteem. It was mentioned earlier how they get to the airport and everybody says, "Hi, we love you," holding up signs. Then they go home and they have no one. And of course, alcohol and drug use can become a way of dealing with other emotional problems.
And Mr. Baldonado, how is this approach used at Veterans Office Solution different from other programs?
Well, typically we see programs work with the veterans based upon the criteria of their funding, which means if they're funded to see X amount of veterans for PTSD, then those veterans will be diagnosed PTSD and maybe other issues are overlooked because the funds don't go with other issues. So our approach would be to deal with and address all issues that an individual may have.
And when you say address certain issues, is that similar to pigeonholing somebody?
Well, absolutely. And typically a contract is written to, designed to come up with certain criteria or certain diagnoses within a group of people. And what our goal would be is to not have people diagnosed based upon funding. They would be diagnosed based upon situation and need.
Okay, and when you make reference to maximizing funding in other programs, what is the shortfall of that type of approach?
Well, one example is in 2008 in New Mexico, there was a contract through the federal government called Access to Recovery. And part of that contract was to deal with veterans and their families. And there was extensive data collected. However, when the funds went away, they dried up. What happened was the data went away and there was nothing we could come off of to see what was exact needs and what was exactly beneficial for the individuals. And so that has been a problem forever. When there is a contract and the contract is up, well then all of a sudden the needs are up. And we know that's not true.
And with VOS's approach based upon what they're doing as a job and having continuous funding, do you think that would serve a useful purpose?
Absolutely, because it would afford them the opportunity to have continuity of care and deal with life's daily situations as they occur. And we wouldn't be telling a person, well, I can't see you after June 30th because the money's gone.
And Mr. Baldonado, do you have clients that go to the Albuquerque VA?
I have had several clients over the years. The clients that have gone have come back with good results, good education, good training, good life skills. However, the waiting list is so extensive that a lot of our clients fall to the wayside before they make it there.
Do you know, is it a majority of clients that fall by the wayside, and it's just a small amount that actually gets serviced by the Albuquerque VA?
It is a small amount. The waiting list, the capacity, the VA's ability to meet the needs of capacity does not seem to be adequate.
Does, based upon your professional experience, does this waiting seem to cause frustration, anxiety, and depression among your clients?
Well, absolutely. It just further perpetuates their feeling of usefulness, purposelessness. Their self-esteem, their self-worth becomes minimized when it says, oh, we realize you have a problem, but we can't deal with you for 6 months. So they can't just put the problem on the shelf and pull it down when they go to treatment. The problem is every day, ongoing.
Would this type of approach lead more to suicide than suicide prevention?
Well, there's always that possibility, because when a person's dealing with a lack of self-esteem, when a person's dealing with ongoing what we call self-medicating with alcohol or substances to having emotional, or the belief of emotional stability, the end result could be suicide.
And Mr. Baldonado, based upon your professional experience, would having a good job help veterans who are experiencing the symptoms of PTSD?
Well, many veterans, when they're in the service, they have a rank, they have a division, they have a task, they have a job, they're trained, and they have purpose within their battalion or their squadron. When they get out of the service, if they have no training and they have no job and they have no income, they tend to lose purpose or vision of tomorrow.
And having a job that pays a livable wage more than minimum wage, approximately $15 or $20 an hour, do you think that would be useful?
Absolutely, because not only would it support their lifestyle and their quality of life, it would support their self-esteem, their self-worth, and they would be more valuable to themselves as well as to the community.
And Mr. Baldonado, having one-stop shopping, which is advocated by Veterans Office Solution, do you think that would help veterans who are recovering from PTSD and other ailments?
Of course, because the immediacy of service delivery would preclude any ongoing relapses or further use or the person just giving up. Typically, when you send them across town to this client or this provider, across town to this provider, all the way out of the county to another provider, they lose interest and lose hope. They feel as though they're just being shuffled like an old deck of cards.
And since they're being shuffled, do many of them stop participating in the mental health counseling?
Well, sure, because it can become easier to just stay home, to isolate, to withdraw, to not reintegrate back into civilian life, and use substances to make the pain go away, to make the sorrow and the grief disappear.
When you say substances, can you tell our viewership what type of substances you are talking about?
Well, of course, alcohol is very predominant because it's everywhere. And then we do have a lot of prescription medications that can be very troublesome, especially when individuals are mailed 90 days worth of medication and they have to self-monitor their own use. If they establish a personality or a belief of hopelessness, they may just try to deal with that issue by taking more medication than what has been prescribed. And of course, that can end up being a suicidal issue, whether it's purposeful or accidental.
And why is addiction addressed differently than other issues that a veteran might have?
Well, VOS, our point of view is to try to eliminate stigma, because a person does not have an addiction or a dependency because they're a lesser than person, because they're weak, because their moral aptitude is less. I mean, a person doesn't go to the liquor store and buy a six-pack of addiction. A person does not necessarily use medications to become dependent upon them. However, the situation does at times end up being that way just by the natural process of taking the medication over and over.
And Mr. Baldonado, you being the director of substance abuse at VOS, how would your approach be different?
Well, what we would do, of course, right off the top is do a veteran's information packet, which is an assessment, and try to determine an individual's status with their civilian reintegration, depression, PTSD items and issues, their self-esteem, suicidality, alcohol, substance or dependence, and drug, substance, or dependence, and address those issues which are most critical to the person at the time, as opposed to addressing issues that are trendy within the funding world.
And when you say an assessment, would this be an individual assessment for each veteran?
Absolutely.
And how would that be?
Well, they would have to sit down. It would be administered by a professional. The individual would sit down. It would be scored. The assessment that we choose to use is within the best practices of the clinical world. And of course, the goal is to have a multidisciplinary review of the results so that the appropriate diagnosis and care is fashioned for the individual.
And when you say assessment, what type of assessment are you talking about? Can you explain that for our viewership?
Well, it's actually a self-administered assessment, and our goal, of course, is for a person to be honest. However, at times there is denial associated with being a lesser than person, or being stigmatized by being a drunk, or stigmatized by being a druggie. And so what the assessment does, it's scored computer, and it determines individual scale scores by needs of the individual's response.
And where is this computer scaling monitored?
Well, it typically, what's done, it would be in an office. However, with the current situation now, we're doing assessments telephonically or telehealth with an individual using electronic devices. So if a person is homebound, or like me, have transportation issues, we could still try to meet their needs telephonically or electronically.
When you say transportation issues, what do you mean?
Well, a lot of folks, if they are in a situation where they have heavy prescription of medication, or they're heavily consuming alcohol to relieve their emotional turmoil, some of the individuals do get in situations where they may not be able to drive because they have been DWI or DUI. And to try to meet them to deal with their health without putting them at risk driving illegally, we would do so.
Thank you for that excellent explanation. We're going to take a momentary break. Please stay with us, and we'll be right back. Thank you.
If we want to improve America's healthcare system, let's start by improving the health of Americans. Despite the best doctors, hospitals, and medical advancements, Americans are not as healthy as they should be. We spend too much on treatment and not enough on wellness and prevention. We need a system based on primary care. When patients have a medical home and a long-term relationship with a doctor, the result is a longer, healthier life and reduced medical costs for everyone. Let's make America a place where health is primary.
They've stormed beaches and freed countries. They've raised our flag and our hope. They've been called leathernecks. They've been called devil dogs. above all, they're called Marines.
Thank you for staying with us. Again, our topic is substance abuse and suicide prevention. Our guest is John Baldonado, the Director of Substance Abuse and Suicide Prevention at Veterans Office Solutions. And Mr. Baldonado, you were mentioning the assessment. How is this incorporated in the veterans' care?
Well, the assessment will aid in determining what we would call a guide or a plan of treatment for the individual, which would include their ability to be on site, to work, and get well legal, professional counseling, medication, and therapy without having to be farmed out.
An employee at VOS then would be able to get treated on the premises and return to his original job. Do you find that to be beneficial?
Absolutely, because since it's a package deal, the veteran doesn't have to worry about being stigmatized by a boss for needing to go to counseling, for missing an hour out of work for a professional service. It would be part of their working package.
And this stigmatization, does that occur in the regular workplace if somebody gets treated and helps themselves?
Typically, we do see this because a boss may look at productivity, and that hour that the employee is off-site, productivity is down. And so that client or that employee would be looked at lesser of an employee than someone that doesn't need help.
And do you think VOS's approach of no stigmatization and returning back to the workplace is the best course of action?
Well, absolutely. There has been EAP programs, employee assistance programs over the years at large corporations that have had similar approaches that were very productive, not only for the employee, but for the outcome of the business.
And Mr. Baldonado, for our viewership, would you address your expertise as it concerns suicide prevention?
Well, what we see, and of course we have two issues here. We have suicide and then we have prevention. Of course, our assessment that the individuals or the employee would engage in would identify those people that are higher risk for suicidality, and they would of course be seeing a therapist directly to address that issue. Another issue on suicide prevention is the ability or what we call prescription drug overdose prevention, which is the ability to stop an overdose in the event that a person either intentionally or accidentally takes too many narcotic medications, which we're seeing there has been an epidemic in America for quite a few years. Last year, over 64,000 people in America died from taking too many pain pills, whether it was intentional or not. And so what we would do, not only would we treat the employer, the co-workers, the family, but what we could do is we would treat them or train them to use what's called Narcan, because this is a product that will reverse an overdose with a spray up the nose. And we would train the family to utilize this product to save a life.
And would that be beneficial to do it at home and in the workplace, as VOS is advocating?
Absolutely, because you never know when a person may accidentally take too many medications. An issue we see quite often is a person may take their medication in the morning and get very, very busy throughout the day, and possibly before they're due another dose, take another dose and have too many doses in too short of a time, whether it's at work or at home.
Are accidental overdosing reasonably common?
Well, very often what we see, and this may be in the population's a little bit older, they may forget that they took their meds or become so busy and they may take their medication twice. Another issue that we need to address is if any of these individuals have had severe injuries, whether it be soft tissue, broken bones, knee replacements, hip replacements, they very well may be on heavy painkiller medication as well.
And VOS's approach of using a clinic on the premises and monitoring the veteran employees, do you find that to be beneficial?
Absolutely, because at some point, of course, the goal is to have the belief and the camaraderie that it's a team. It's not we're treating you because you're lesser than, we're treating you because you're one of us and we want us all to prosper.
And do you find that veterans work well together as a team?
Typically they do. Of course, there's different issues that they have associated with ranking within the service. We have seen, I myself am not a veteran. I was raised by veterans. My household was full of PTSD from what my father went through. And sometimes vets will be less reluctant to deal with a vet because of the perception that they're still part of this system. But some of them welcome a person that is outside of that regime, and the response can be very positive. And I hate to say it, but that may be because of bad expectations or results with previous services at the VA.
And you've seen that in the past where people have had negative experiences with the VA itself?
Absolutely. And unfortunately, a lot of it is because of long waiting lists and the inability to deal with people's needs because of the large capacity of need. And
you have mentioned in the past chemical-free life. What do you mean by that, sir?
Well, some people do aspire to have a life to where they're not using substances to dictate their emotions or their lack of emotions. Then, of course, we have addiction and we have dependency. Dependency, myself, I'm diabetic, and I need to take a medication because my body is dependent upon the medication. That's not addiction because I'm not out there stealing to support my diabetes. An addiction can be a compulsion where a person becomes so overwhelmed by the substance that they will steal or lie or do what it takes to maintain their drug use. And so we address both of them because they're equally as important, but they are to some degree a different approach that needs to be looked at.
And VOS is advocating a chemical-free life at the workplace. Do you find that to be a positive thing?
Well, absolutely. Some people do need medications, and we're aware of that. There are those people, for some reason, may need to be on certain medications, and of course, all medication is chemical. The goal, of course, would be to have them placed in a situation to where their medication would not put themselves or others at risk of their performance.
And having everything on site, one-stop shopping, do you think, in your professional opinion, that this aids a chemical-free life?
Well, sure, because people can support each other in their decisions and their determinations to attain a drug-free lifestyle.
And Mr. Baldonado, can you describe for our viewership prescription drug overdose program?
Sure. What we do at the PDOPS, or Prescription Drug Overdose Program, is we train people, we train employers, we're trying to get into the funeral homes, we're trying to get into physical therapy sites where people tend to be on heavy medications, and we train them to revive an overdose if it happens. It's a simple spray with a nasal spray. Officers carry this now. We're trying to train all employees. We also have individuals that may have a medicine cabinet full of medications from years and years, and to avoid them getting despondent and taking many of those, we also hand out, and we have many what's called Deterra. And what happens is you can take 16 or 45 pills, 6 ounces of liquid, or 6 patches, such as a fentanyl patch, which is prescribed for pain. Mix it with water, shake it up, and throw it in the garbage. So you don't have to worry about all the old medications, and this cannot be hazardous to the environment because it deactivates the chemicals.
And as you are advocating that this prescription drug overdose program, PDOPS, be used at Veterans Office Solutions, do you think that would be helpful to VOS employees?
Not only would it be helpful to the employees, it would be helpful to the employer and to the loved ones and family as well.
How can a veteran or anyone else who is associated with Veterans Office Solution take advantage of the training that you are advocating?
Well, they would need to start by calling VOS, and then that would be coordinated out of the VOS main office.
And Mr. Baldonado, can somebody contact you through VOS?
Absolutely. Any time. They can call VOS, and VOS will contact me, either email, telephone, text message, whatever means is available.
And just for the record, the number where you could reach Mr. Baldonado is 575-523-8500. And if you want to send him an email, please feel free to do so at veteransofficesolutions@gmail.com. Mr. Baldonado will get these responses, and he will respond to you individually and personally. What we would like to tell you now is this. Now look, veterans are selfless. They have pride in what they do. They have fortitude in what they do. They have adaptability, and they have deference. Humble for work. And if you want to see a Veterans Office Solutions Center in your state, feel free to contact your United States Senator, contact your congresspeople, tell them to give us a call. The resources are there, and at this time of great economic uncertainty, this is what needs to be done. They could call me, Tim Chelpaty. I'm well versed in the subject matter. Again, they could call us at 575-523-8500. We appreciate your viewership. We appreciate your time. We appreciate the tremendous knowledge that John Baldonado shared with us today. He is the Director of Substance Abuse at Veterans Office Solutions. This is one-stop shopping. It eliminates the frustration. It eliminates the long time. And it is the best form of suicide prevention possible under these circumstances. Thank you very much. Good day.